Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Startup Scale Up People podcast. Here is a place where people build their dreams, life, businesses. We have different type of conversations. And today I'm going to talk with Amrit Dhaliwal. He's the founder of Walfinch. It's a care home business. It's very interesting because this is, as you know, this is quite different. It's not tech. It's not, like a fintech or SaaS platform or, any other like AI, business that is in the market. So we want to start with you, Amrit, because of course, it's a big market, it's around 68 billion in the UK. And I know that you've been doing this for 6 years. So your business have been growing, and also you do have a franchise model, which make it more interesting. So yeah, let's start the conversation. Thank you for joining, Amrit.
Thank you for having me on, Mario. It's an interesting thing. I've done various different things over the years, and in about 2012, I joined the home care market. And about 6 years ago, I thought, well, actually, I can really do something differently, and started my own home care business, Walfinch, where I then franchise the operation and help entrepreneurs scale. Usually it's people leaving full-time employment, coming into full-time self-employment and changing their lives through the power of franchising. So it's a super interesting thing because you've got many different stakeholders there, essentially.
And how did you start this business? Because you were working in hospitality before, then you moved into home care, right? What made you see such a huge opportunity in an industry where, most entrepreneurs overlook?
Yeah, so it's a few different things. So I was in hospitality. I had an Italian restaurant and a tea room. And I was working 90 hours a week. And I thought, well, God, there's got to be more to life than this. And I had a lot of fun with it. And I was very young. I got my first sort of catering business at 22. And then I met my now wife, my then girlfriend. And actually she's a dentist and family come from a nursing home background. And she was the one that actually recommended home care. And I thought, what on earth is that? Next thing you know, I bought a franchise and I kind of shot from the hip. I thought, right, let's give it a go and see how it plays. And immediately kind of getting in, I thought, this is the thing that nobody talks about, right? Boring businesses. Everyone's talking about AI and SaaS businesses and, all of the sexy stuff. But actually, no one's talking about home care. And no one's thinking, actually, we can change our lives, families' lives, carers' lives, clients' lives, their family lives through this. And so I really thought long and hard, and I went, fully into it. And thought, this is what I've got to do. I've got to change the way that we think about home care, change the way we think about franchising in the UK, and really drive that agenda.
And how the business model works? How do you do the franchising model? I'm interested to know.
Yeah, so the way that the franchising operation works is, so I might have someone like yourself that comes along and says, right, I've been working 9 to 5 in said role, and I'd actually like to just change my career completely, usually, and buy a franchise. Now, invariably, what the beauty of buying a franchise is that you are removing some of that burden of the startup, and so you're able to then do the startup piece, but at a faster rate. You're kind of fast forwarding a few years because someone else, me, and my team have already made the mistakes. And so we're kind of coaching you through to what to do. So there's a license fee, and then there's an ongoing royalty fee. So
is everything under the same brand?
It's all under the same brand. So if you think about McDonald's is a collection of small businesses, right? And if you think about, all franchising operations, that is what it is. So you've got Walfinch, so you're in London Bridge, it might be Walfinch London Bridge, for example, and then, Walfinch Putney and whatever it might be. So you've got all of these different localized businesses owned by local entrepreneurs. And what we do is help you understand how to scale. We have some really robust support. So we've broken the support down into kind of 3 cohorts. As soon as you start with us, you go into a cohort that we call the Finch Flight Club. So you come in and we are, really kind of holding on to you. Daily calls, meetings, showing you how to do the business development and so on, getting you, to £1 and then beyond. When you hit more than £30,000 in revenue a month, we then graduate you into the Rise to Thrive group. And then we really start talking about management and the skill around that and really kind of coach you through that piece. And then we get into the Thrive Academy, which is our top tier group that are £80,000 a month and beyond in revenue. And here we're really talking about how to kind of exit the day-to-day operations business. Do we have the right people here that are going to take you to the next leg, double, triple the revenue, and so on? Talking about multi-unit franchising and so forth. So really, because I have been a former franchisee, I really, work with the team on the support and what it looks like.
How many, how many clients do you have or franchises?
Yeah, so I think we've got about 40 locations around the country, and they're all, some of them have been trading for a few years, some of them are just starting and going through the registration. I think we've got, 1,000, 1,500 clients around the country, and and that's just kind of a growing number essentially. And so we tend to take on 7 to 10 new branches every year, which is like really nice contained growth that we can cope with. And we just kind of keep pushing along on that.
Wow. And when you say care home, because there are different type of homes, right? Like for adults, for mental health, there are different categories. Which one do you work?
So we're the opposite of care home. We're home care. So it's agency model work. And so if your grandmother was at home and not feeling so great, a company like ours would come in and support her. So we work with anyone over the age of 18, so all adults, and effectively, one of the key focuses that we have at Walfinch is that we consider ourselves more of a wellness brand for older people. So we really focus on driving the growth of older people through the power of movement. We talk about time to thrive, where growing older is not the final chapter, it's the beginning of the next chapter. We talk about thriving, not surviving, in your later years. So it's really, we work on that sort of principle of working with people to help improve the quality of their lives in that time.
Okay. And now, yes, I was a little bit confused because it came to my mind the other business model. For this one, how does it work in terms of regulation? Because I think that's one of the main barriers, right, when you want to do these sort of businesses.
Yeah, so it's a huge barrier to entry, and I think that's also one of the really nice things about being part of a franchise network. So being part of a franchise network, they'll support you, or they should be supporting you through getting through that registration. In England, it is the Care Quality Commission. There are other regulators around the UK, and so there's lots of paperwork, interviews that need to be satisfied, and so on.
And which are the typical, because you said that it's home care, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which type of services are the top, the most important ones that your franchise?
So I think there's a load of different types of services, but if you think about most people that receive home care, they will want to receive things first thing in the morning, sort of helping them get up and about and medication and so on. But actually, one of the other really popular things that we do is have sort of more companionship and really work with people. Say, well, we have an activity promise that we try to adhere to, and say, well, in each visit that's longer than an hour, how much activity can we support said person to do so that they are actually, getting some activity. Now, one of the interesting things about this is quite simply that I think one of the problems that you have with older people in the UK is that we're not focused on that. We don't talk about activity. We don't talk about building muscle mass for older people and so on. One of the things I've got my mum doing, who's in her 70s, is squats every day, got, protein powder flowing. And I think we, just thinking about aging in a very different way.
So basically you can have PTs, therapists, nurses, I don't know, which other specialties do you have?
So we do a little bit of nursing. That is maybe 10% of what we do overall. And so the piece around the nursing is not the predominant thing that we do, but that I think is where the market is going. I think if I fast forward in 10 years' time, we will be very much focused on that home health piece. And if you then think about what is happening in the interim, we are really working with care workers that are trained to then go into people's homes and make sure that they are happy, safe, and sort of really kind of flowing well there.
Why did you decide to do this franchising model instead of, building the existing brand by yourself?
So I thought about it. For me, I think the thing that I really thought about was it's about impact. I would have made more money over the last 5 or 6 years running my own home care business. But I can make more impact if I am scaling through the power of franchising, because actually that message is getting to, we want to get it to every corner of the country. And that's a very different sort of proposition.
And which is the biggest opportunity that you see during the next decade?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, for me, I think this kind of focus on wellness is a huge piece. And I think that's a very important piece when we're thinking about the next decade, both wellness and then health. So, and by health, I mean more kind of medical type of care at home. I think that there's going to be a transformation in sort of, ICU unit type of work that is happening in people's homes over the next decade, because our hospitals can't cope. And really, if you take home care out of that situation, the National Health Service will really collapse without the provision of community care.
Well, that's something that I see a lot in LATAM, right? Actually, my niece, she's a nurse, and she does this. Basically, she goes to every single person home and treat them there.
Yeah.
And we've seen that it's more and more and more and more. It's growing a lot because of, the lack of capacity that there is in the hospitals and in the market, to treat people in there.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's like, so I think it's a big opportunity. I was reading that some businesses or franchises that you have, they make around 1 million revenue.
So the average franchisee at end of year 4 should be hitting about £1 million in revenue. Our top performer, in her 6th year now, she'll sort of hopefully break around the £4 million in revenue. So, there is a real wide array. I mean, she's not the average performer. She's very much above average, but, that is kind of where we're at. So it can be a really interesting, forward-facing type of business, frankly.
What separates the top performers from everyone else?
That's a lovely question, that, Mario. I think there's probably 2 things that I would say. Number 1 is following the model. Most people, or lots of people will buy a franchise and say, well, no, I think, I bought this McDonald's franchise, but I'm going to change the temperature of how I cook the chips because I like my chips more crispy. It's like, well, McDonald's have tested the hell out of this. They know where the chips need to be. So let's get to your first few £1 million in revenue. Let's make it profitable and sustainable. And then we can talk about how you like the chips. So I think someone that follows the model, very much blindly in the first couple of years is actually a good quality franchisee, and they are somebody that will then succeed at a faster rate. The second thing is, and this is actually really part of number 1, but the second thing is a great networker. Someone that is willing to get out. And I frankly, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're a tech business, you're a restaurant business, you're a care business, be a great networker. And if you can get out, build relationships, that alone will change the way that your business operates. Us meeting today, and you just think, well, oh gosh, maybe in 3 years' time, there's something interesting that I want to link my franchise network to your new community. Interesting, right? But that wouldn't happen if we weren't here today talking to each other.
Yeah, that's true. Like even now is more relevant than before after COVID, and first was COVID, and then working from home, and then now AI. So everything's getting like less and less human, less communication, and less interaction. And I've seen here in London that everything is starting to happen now by face to face, right? So yes, it's a very good point. Like labor shortages are one of the biggest challenges in social care, right? It's not just in the UK, it's in everywhere. How do you attract and retain exceptional carers?
Yeah, I spend a lot of my time talking about how to attract good quality talent across the business as a whole. And I think there's lots of different ways to do it. I think, first of all, it's about making sure that you've got a really clear message. How are you different to your competitor? And one of the things I really focus on is reverse benchmarking. And so, when we're benchmarking, we're saying, well, okay, Mario's business does this really well. I'm going to copy it, right? The reverse benchmarking concept is Mario's business does all of these things really well, but, their first phone call, not so good, Everything else is great, but that first phone call, not so great. And so I'm going to spend loads of time and effort on making that first phone call phenomenal, whatever that thing might be. Mario has a great businesses over here, but the carers, they're not dressed so nicely, so I'm going to focus on that, And so reverse benchmarking, I think, is a really interesting thing, and you can do that in any business. And what that means is that you then get known for something. And actually people want to come to you because you have a differentiator. So I think that is really important. The other thing is be obsessed with collecting and retaining good talent. Understand what that means. Who is good? When can I afford them? I probably need to hire them before I can afford them. How am I retaining them? Someone that's good quality, you probably need a bit of romancing, frankly. They're not going to come overnight. They might take 6 months, a year, 3 years, whatever it is. So let's keep that going. When people are in, am I giving them a world-class service? Do they have their birthdays off, a cake at Christmas or whatever it is? And am I getting to know them? Do I know their dogs and chickens' names? Do I know their kids' names? Do I know when they've got issues going on at home? And I think really going to that next level makes you a great employer, but also what it then does is it means that you attract much better quality talent. And then when you do attract them, you're able to retain them. And I think you can do that with care workers, with MDs, with anyone. One of the things I really like doing, which is free of charge, handwritten notes to my team, with very specific compliments, gratitude. Mario, you did this. It meant this to me. It changed my life this way. Thank you. I don't know how many employers take the time to do that, and I think simple things, simple thanks can actually change the whole game.
And what about AI? Because, AI is transforming every industry. And how do you think it will change home care? And where should technology never replace human connection?
Yeah. Look, I think AI can be very useful. If I had a magic wand, I would not have it exist because I think it makes our lives very fast. But on the other hand, it is here, and so we're fully kind of embracing it, and I'm, obsessing over it and getting into it. And what I think, and certainly in the care sector, it's about taking away the administrative burden. And because the good quality staff members, what they want to be doing is they want to be focused on doing the end delivery, the people stuff. I want to give them the time to do that. What I don't want them doing is, messing around over admin work that needs to be done to say thank you to a regulator. Let's really focus on the work. Yes, the admin needs to be there and needs to be good and so on. But actually, when we talk about the fact that that there's shortages within the sector, well, actually, if good quality people are coming in, and instead of delivering great care, we're asking them to do some admin, it's a bad investment as well. So I think that will be a massive transformative shift within the sector. And we're talking about a sector that's pretty archaic still. We recently just started talking about digital care planning from paper, So AI is like, future stuff for us. But we're in it at Walfinch. We're really kind of building our own stuff and building our own tech in it and really working through what is working, what is not, and how are we collecting the data. If you look at the average care company, the data points are insane. And so I think that data points piece is quite intriguing as well.
Are you working on that? Are you building an app, for example, for the nurses or specialists, to include the data, the plan, how was the visit, what went well, what went wrong, like how they can, do their job in a more efficient way, because the admin that they have to do is quite actually a lot. And how you done progress on that?
Yeah, so we've got two different segments that we're working through. So we work with our third-party supplier. We're helping them build out their AI and saying, well, this is what's kind of working, what's not. And we're really sort of digging in deep there. On the other hand, we're building internal things for our franchisees to say, well, okay, this is what's going to help business performance, and we're building through that piece. So those two aspects are quite intriguing.
And how you worked, because I don't know how it worked, the model in here, but like the specialists, spend a lot of time commuting, right, and going to different, patients, I would say. How you worked on a transport planning algorithm or something that to help them to reduce the time, travel?
I think this is where the really useful thing about franchising the operation is. Unlike a corporate business that is one office, working nationally and so on, we are a collection of small businesses in all around the country. And so what you then can do is say, well, okay, you're in London Bridge, so we're going to have an office on the bridge, and we're going to get walkers, cyclists, drivers and so on, all working in the local neighborhood. And that changes the way that you operate it. And I think, you have to be a slight bit of a logistical genius in these businesses, but I think going hyper local is the way to eliminate that issue.
Curious, I don't know if you can reveal this number, but how much is the revenue that you make per year?
So I think this year we're on track as a network to about sort of 22 to 25 million in top line revenue, and that's kind of grown from literally zero about 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow, that's very good.
Yeah,
very good. Like even the startups don't do that. They take startups and they don't. All of them. Few of them. A lot of them do, but generally it's very difficult.
Yeah,
I know. 25 million, like 5 years is very good. The 6. Yeah.
I think the aim is in the next 5 years to get to 100 million, and in the next 10 years to sort of break that 200 to 250 million mark and work internationally and so on. So we've got sort of our goals very clearly set and working towards that and really kind of digging in.
Are you doing this just with your own, say like a budget, or do you have investors or like external loans or bank loans? How do you manage the finance?
No, so it's all me. We've had funding along the way, but again, all sort of personal and no other directors, no other shareholders. So it really means something. It's. I think it's always interesting when you're working with other people's money. I think that the game very much changes when it's not other people's money, and you sort of makes you very hyper focused to get to your goals.
Yeah, so that's true. I have a small business as well. It's like between 1 to 2 million, but it's retail, totally different. I want to start growing it now, but yeah, I just spend a few hours in that business, like per week, 4 hours, and not like 100% on it. But try to build a team now to make it happen. So I know how it is. I know how difficult it is. Well done. Another question is about, you have built, it's more personal, you have built businesses in restaurants, retail, healthcare now, right? What entrepreneurial principles have remained true across every industry?
I think there's two things. Number one is discipline. If you are not disciplined, you will not win. End of story. I don't care how talented you are. You need to work harder than everyone else. And that is it. And in fact, actually, sometimes being really talented can be a curse because you think, well, I deserve X because I am talented. And I think working hard and knowing how to work hard and knowing that you need to continuously work hard for many years before you expect a return, that is discipline and that is required. Number two, and I think maybe the most important thing, keeping laser focus on what stuff's the top of the funnel and what is bringing the revenue in, because there is no business that had a I'm earning too much revenue problem, right? Because actually everything can work once the sales bit works. And whether you're selling paninis, whether you're selling Kira jobs, whatever it is, it's the same. I think, you need to make sure that the sales funnel works. Everything else is a moot point.
You started this business 6 years ago, right?
Yes. Yeah. My first franchise, December 19.
And which was the biggest challenge?
I think, look, the biggest challenge for me was believing that I'm going to sell that first franchise and actually do it. That first year was tremendously hard, because that first year required me to believe and then me to get everyone else to believe and then to actually then say, right, now I've got to work really hard to make sure that their belief is real. That actually do the thing that I said I was going to do. And I think that first year, it's tremendously hard. Don't get me wrong, the second, third, fourth, fifth year have also been tremendously hard, but in a very different way. I think once you believe and you see something happen and you think, well, okay, this is something real, you create something tangible.
And which were the key challenges in the care sector?
What are the key challenges in the care sector? I think simply finding the right people, whether that is the right franchisees that, we have that chemistry with, that want to kind of keep driving and are doing it for the right reasons. That is a huge, huge thing. The second piece is then finding the right teams to work around the country. And I think that is also quite a massive piece because actually, if you are just taking someone in because they have a pulse in a car and they want the job and whatever, that is not going to end well. We talk about retention of staffing, and I think really the retention starts when you recruit somebody. If you make the wrong recruit, you're never going to retain them, and it's really focusing on that.
How many people? Do you know how many people how many people do you every day with all the locations and everywhere?
That is a good question, and I have that information, but I don't have the correct number to hand here, unfortunately. But I think we probably, it's probably over 1,000 on a daily basis. People that we visit on a yeah.
Wow, these are very. You make it sound easy, but it's not. You use that phrase when I play tennis and I do a very good volley close to the net. It's like, it looks easy, but it's not. No, but you are like, making it sound easy. But I know, working with people. This is like basically working with people. People going to other people's houses where people get vulnerable, right? And because you are in other people's home that you don't know how it's gonna be, and then you are treating someone who's maybe aged. Someone with a mental illness, they need treatments. It's like, it's not everything the perfect world, right? So where have been the main challenges there? How do you manage that?
And you're so right. When you're talking about people, the game will keep shifting all of the time. There might be challenging behavior from a client. There might be somebody that, they don't kind of gel well. And I think really for me, the big thing has always been around communication and saying, well, okay, let's really communicate, but also let's really take some action quickly. Because if Mary, if you've got an uncle and he's got difficult behavior with a member of staff, well, actually, if we get right in front of the family quickly and say, right, this is what's happening, this is what we think, let's make some changes and keep tinkering. It's not a straight chess strategy. It's always just tinkering. You've got to be fluid like water and fit the gap. And I think there's too many care businesses that are too rigid to say, well, this is what we do. Your uncle doesn't fit it. I'm like, well, that's just not reasonable, is it? Actually, because this is what your uncle needs. This is what the carer needs. And this is what we can provide. So now let's try to figure out how the jigsaw puzzle works.
Yeah. No, you're right. We have to, with people, it has to be very human. But I like the business because it's about people, right? And it's actually high impact business as well, because I know that everyone's, we get very commercial transactions. Oh, like it's a business, 1 million, 10 million, 50, 100. But this way is, it's in the health industry, right? And it's a high impact as well. And you just said that you've been trying to shape the industry as well to improve. I mind the quality, the service, I mind the technology, what you're doing with your third party to provide a better service, basically, for your franchisees and also for the the clients, the final clients, right? So just one of the last questions. How do you see that, your organization will help shaping the future of the home care industry? I don't know,
I think, if I fast forward 10 years, what I hope will happen and what I'm working to do is for us to rethink the way we think about aging in the UK and how we provide support. So it's not just about going in and cleaning Mrs. Smith's face with the yellow flannel and her bum with a blue flannel. It is about saying, well, what is her quality of life? And we're not just talking about lifespan, we're talking about a wellness span and saying, well, actually, if Mrs. Smith wants to be playing with her grandchildren at 90, well, at 40 years of age, she needs to be doing squats at the gym, weighted, and, that is going to help her, mobility and so on. And it's really, what I want us to do is start thinking about aging at a much younger age, and us to be really thinking about the kind of connectivity between the whole thing, and really driving this emotion of time to thrive in your later years.
No, it's a very good point, and a lot of these young generations, they care a lot about how we age, right? And also now I care a lot about how I age, and I have supplements, like taking the right protein, powder, creatine, supplements, and many things more.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that I'm aging well, go to the gym, play tennis, exercise, sleeping well. But the I would say the older generations don't look at that, and we hear it. You have to to go to the gym when you're over your 40s, because your muscles will reduce by 40%, like in 10 years, right? So it drops dramatically.
Yeah.
So how do you want to do that? How do you want to include that subject in the industry?
So in a wide variety of ways. So I have a podcast where it's called Walking with Walfinch, and I talk about this, and it's a walk and talk concept. I have a book where I talk about how we're looking at rebranding the home care market. It's called Time to Thrive, the Home Care Revolution. I talk about this on my socials constantly and how we can all be part of that journey. I'm an ambassador for the Royal Osteoporosis Society, and part of that whole concept is really about sort of connecting these two worlds. I do a lot of public speaking and podcasts like this to say, well, actually, what we're trying to do is build the momentum behind that.
Great. It sounds like a very good story, and you have a lot of work to do for the next years, Amrit. Just to close, before we close, last question is do you have any advice for everyone who would like to get into this industry or to start a new business or to do franchising? What would you say to them?
I think, first of all, make the decision. If you are unhappy with your work and you are upset every Sunday night, it's not going to change. So just make the leap. And there needs to be some courage at some point to just make the leap from employment to self-employment. And then, if you are going down the franchising route, it's to get the right relationship and understand, well, do I have the right chemistry with a franchisor? And I think that's really important because, do I feel like they're going to pick up the phone when the doo-doo hits a fan on a Friday night and I really need the support? Are they going to be there? So that's the second thing. The third thing is, are you willing to work harder than you have ever worked before with the least amount of thanks, and knowing that eventually, hopefully, it will pay off? And if you're not, and you need that consistent sort of thank you, and you need the kind of, well, okay, I need that, right, I'm going to get this, and that's going to be right for me, and so on. Being self-employed is not for you. There needs to be it is a game of luck as well. And I believe that you can make your own luck through working tremendously hard. But an entrepreneur, you'll find an entrepreneur in the casino as opposed to on a chess table. There is strategy, but you also have to be willing to take some risk.
Well, that was a very good advice. Thank you, Amrit, for your time. Last thing is, I would like to give you the word again, to explain how people can connect with you, how they can, make business with you, how does it work?
Yeah, so if you go along to walfinchfranchising.com, that is, there's a page there called The Walking CEO, and all of my contact details are there. My LinkedIn, Amrit Dhaliwal, my Instagram, Amrit Walfinch, my Substack, Amrit Dhaliwal again, and my book, my podcast. There's a load of different ways to get hold of us, but walfinchfranchising.com is probably the best source for it all.
Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amrit, for your time. I hope that everything is going to go well. I don't have a doubt of that. And thank you for joining the podcast and sharing your story. Looking forward to talk to you in the future.